Good evening. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Salem School Committee of April 28th, 2025 at 7 p.m. This meeting is taking place in person at 29 Highland Avenue, room 227 in Salem. You can also join via Zoom using the link posted in the meeting agenda. We have a number of members participating remotely, so all votes will be by roll call vote. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Hoffman. A roll call vote. Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz? Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Public comment. The Salem School Committee would like to hear from the public on issues that affect the school district and are within the scope of the committee's responsibilities. Spanish interpretation is available for anyone who needs it. The members of the school committee would like to remind the public that Salem Public School students regularly attend school committee meetings. We encourage all meeting participants to model respectful and productive public discourse for our young learners. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment online? Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. There's the minutes of the school committee meeting of April 7th, the minutes of the budget public hearing of April 14th, the minutes of the special school committee meeting of April 15th, approval of the field trip to New York City for Collins and Saltonstall grade 8 in May, donation from fundraising at Horace Mann, donation for Salem High School's Wicked Wrench Club from the Antique and Classic Boat Festival, and approval of warrants of April 3rd, April 10th, April 17th, and April 24th.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Miranda. A roll call vote. Member Cornell.
Yes.
Member Cruz. Member Hoffman.
Yes.
Member Manning.
Yeah, if I could just, I think we should mention the amount for the Wrench Club. That's a generous donation from sort of an outside.
Yeah, would you like to share it?
So just.
Your mic. Move
Sorry. Get the mic. I just want to acknowledge that the donation from the Wicked Wrench Club for the Antique and Classic Boat Festival is for $10,000. And I vote yes.
Member Miranda.
Yes.
Member Campbell.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz. The voice from the void. And yeah, a special gratitude to the Antique and Classic Boat Festival for that $10,000 donation. That's very generous. Student Representatives report. Mark.
So the advisory council doesn't have too much to report on because of April break, but today we finally voted in after around like 2 to 3 weeks of the election. We voted in our secretary, our press secretary, and our officer at large. Miriam was voted in to be secretary. Ella was voted in for press secretary, and Cindy was voted in for officer at large. So those will be our secretary, press secretary, and officer at large for the coming year and for the remainder of this year. And we'd also like to mention that May 29th is going to be the last day for seniors, so everyone's in a little bit of a crunch time for AP tests and just coming up on the end of the year. That's all I have.
Yeah, you're up, Superintendent.
I do want to just share, Mark, you don't know this because we haven't met yet, but because of the feedback we received from the student advisory group just before break, we did a lot of work in the bathrooms at Salem High School, particularly the locker room bathrooms, which we heard a lot about. So I want to thank our facilities team. Z was there meeting with students, and we heard about flies, and we heard about toilet seats that were cracked in the very old locker room, which thankfully we don't have to get too connected to, because we'll have new locker rooms and hopefully in the future. But I really appreciate the feedback the students gave, and already we've tried to make changes based on the input that they shared with Z on that day. So I'll circle back with everybody when we meet next week. So thank you, Mark. I also want to take a moment. Hope everybody had a nice vacation. It's hard to believe that May starts this week and we're in the final stretch of the school year. It moves way too quick. I hope people had a chance to enjoy break. I do want to just call out a couple things before we go into the budget adjustments that we've made based on feedback we received. But a couple things. I had the pleasure of attending the middle school sort of celebration, end of the week celebration at the YMCA for a group of middle schoolers who came the entire week. Were trained in CPR, were trained in babysitting, had a chance to be also do swimming. They had a chance to volunteer at the pantry. It was an amazing program, and I want to thank. We had our educators there. We had Brad Malone. We had Joy Richmond Smith was there. Dolly was there from Collins. It was incredible to see kids who maybe haven't been the most engaged with school and extracurricular activities. Were super engaged in this program that was really dedicated to giving them some workplace, some work experience and preparing them for life after middle school and giving them some credentials that they can use moving forward. And each of the students was very complimentary of the experience. So I want to thank Ellen was involved in putting that together. Taylor McDonald was as well. And I think it's a good model for what our vacation academies can be. You know, it's not just about MCAS prep. It's got to also be, how we make, that's not necessarily what's going to engage kids to come. What got them there every day was the fact that were getting credentials and certifications and experience that will help them move forward. They all want to work. They want jobs. And that's something they can market and put on their resumes that they had those experiences over break. So I want to thank everybody that made that possible. I also want to call out that Tuesday night and Wednesday night, the next 2 nights, we have a very important community meetings about the new design of the new Salem High School building project. We're calling on anybody and everyone to come to give us feedback on 4 preferred design options for a new Salem High School that the building committee will consider for a vote at its May 8th meeting. They include the renovation of the existing building, renovation of the field house, and then a new build for classrooms and CTE spaces. It includes new construction that maintains the Salerno building and demolishes the rest of the building, and then entire new construction, which demolishes everything and builds new there. There's 4 different options that will be considered, and we want to hear from people. We've already heard great feedback on social media about where are the music rooms, why are they not on the first floor, questions about, just even some of the layouts. That it doesn't mean that that's the final design, but it is input around which of the 4 options the building committee will move forward with, whether it's a reno add, or new construction. And so we hope to see folks there tomorrow night, 6:30 to 8 o'clock at Salem High School in person, and then Wednesday evening via Zoom, 6:30 to 7:30, and there's a link available. We hope to see as many folks there for those sessions. And then I do want to just note that we celebrated Arbor Day. The mayor showed his planting skills today by planting a tree by himself. No, we were fortunate that we didn't plant it, that 4th graders at Saltonstall did. It was a great event, but he was quite a celebrity. I mean, nobody cares who the superintendent is. They all care who the mayor is, and he was doing photo shoots, not planting, I want to point out, because people were interested in photo shoots with the mayor. But it was a beautiful day. Want to thank the Tree Commission and Salem, Darlene Malis, for her support and work, and it's a labor of love for those folks, and we appreciate the city team also that made it happen today for Arbor Day at Saltonstall. I think Arbor Day was officially last Friday, but we celebrated today. All right. With that, I do want to give some updates on the budget. That's the primary agenda item for today. So I don't know if we can cue the slides here. Okay. I do want to first just say we are grateful for the dialogue that we've had with so many people over the last 4 weeks on the budget. We did have a chance to, over break, while people are hopefully relaxing, while it was a relaxed schedule for us at the central office, there was a lot of discussion about the input that we received from the community. And I wanted to share with the school committee some updated recommendations that we're making on the budget. It isn't, unfortunately, new money didn't drop out of the sky since our last meeting. And so if we adding anything back, it did have to come with taking other things out and making shifts. So I just want to call that out. While I'm not, done hoping that we will continue to get additional resources for Salem between now and the start of the school year. That can happen with the governor's budget, with the final budget at the state level. We're still waiting on the Senate as well. And tomorrow we do have an important meeting with the Commissioner of Early Education here in Salem. We're meeting with them to talk about additional funding for pre-K, as we have noted over time that our pre-K programming, we don't feel like it's getting fully funded. While we have access to a lot of additional funding, supports a lot of our partner programs, which is great. We also serve 190 students here in the Salem Public Schools in grades 3 and 4, and we want to make sure that we're getting our fair share as a Salem Public School, because the Chapter 70 formula doesn't also fully reimburse for 3 and 4-year-olds. So we have a meeting tomorrow, and we're hopeful with those discussions tomorrow. So with that, I did want to share a couple budget reminders for folks. Remember, our budget is 4.8% increase. It's a $3,580,445.57 increase from the prior year. It is a very complicated architecture. I think that's an understatement if I ever heard one. This is a very complicated budget that has a lot of moving parts. We looked really hard for efficiencies. We continue to do that in the last week since we had our last meetings, the budget hearing and so forth, and the budget discussion that the school committee had. We looked at recurring revenue to reduce expenses, and the final budget now has recommended includes 57 position reductions to personnel and reductions to non-personnel. The appropriation remains at $78,173,061, and Elizabeth will go into that with greater detail. That just gives you an overview, again, of where we are. Some adjustments that we've made, and this, I hope people can read this, but I know the school committee has a copy of this. I'll just go through this. We are recommending returning a position at Horace Mann that's partially art and partially intervention. We're not going to talk about individual names here. We're going to talk about positions. We heard, compelling input through the process around the need to maintain adults to the extent possible in the building they are in. That's not going to be true universally. Horace Mann is a school that has had some inconsistency of staff over time. It is a school that has struggled with staffing in the last few years, and more recently has been in an uptick of stability of staff. And it was compelling to hear what the families and the community had to say. In doing so, we would eliminate the floater pre-K position at Horace Mann, which was an oversight because we eliminated that position at Bates. We did not eliminate it at Horace Mann, and that, for consistency's sake, we plan to do that. And we also are planning to eliminate a math specialist, a part-time math specialist at Saltonstall. The reason that those are connected is because we want to try to keep our specialists, art, music, PE, and library, we want more of them to be able to remain full-time at their school. That is not going to happen universally. I don't want anybody to think that that's going to happen everywhere, but we're trying to do more. We're trying to ensure that there is greater continuity of staff in schools. But in doing so, we are asking elementary specialists to be flexible in providing support in literacy and math, intervention, and a variety of different coverages at the school, which you all heard about being an issue, with the elimination of roles across the district. People are concerned about that. It is a fact that we have more specialists, and by that I mean art, music, PE, and library, than we have need across the district for next year. And while those folks are very valuable, right, we don't have a need for them they don't have full-time assignments at every place. So we're going to ask them to help us in other areas that are necessary. And for that reason, we felt that Saltonstall, because it's very small and will have 4 full-time specialists next year, that those folks would be asked to assist and support with intervention and tutoring supports in schools for the upcoming school year. That's a model that Carleton has used historically and other schools have done effectively, and it will help us to retain these individuals and stay connected in their schools more than our initial budget presentation had allowed for. I did provide you with reading and math support and enrichment allocations, and by that I mean specialist allocations across the school. We tried to do the best we could and improve the balance across the elementary schools, and you had a copy of that that I sent you at some point in the last few days, and so you were able to see the matrix. The additional adjustment that we've made, is returning the full reading specialist and literacy coach position at Bates. We thought that after the feedback we heard, we felt that there was inequity across the schools, that Bates, being the second largest elementary school, did not have what Witchcraft had in terms of reading and literacy support, and so we returned that full-time position. There's an individual who's supposed to retire, and we weren't going to fill that role in the initial proposal, but now we are going to allow them to fill that role mid-year so that they have, again, an allocation that's similar to Witchcraft, which has roughly a few more, more students, but roughly the same amount of students, over 400 students there. So those are the adjustments that I'm recommending. Again, this is for your consideration as a school committee. Additionally, Salem High School had not been clear about their final budget adjustments, and so I'm here to share what those are. We plan on eliminating a vacant guidance counselor position to replace with support from an outside partner. Not fully, but extra support. We're proposing to eliminate a vacant internship coordinator role. I shouldn't say it's not vacant right now, but that individual is not returning next year, and that work is going to shift to an existing CTE position of somebody that's already started to do some work. There is a vacant paraprofessional position that will be eliminated, and there will be 2 hall monitor positions that will be eliminated as part of the adjustment. And then we're going to need to shift 1 existing position, TBD, to a continuing grant. So that's an existing role that we do have a specific grant for Salem High School and their redesign, and we would be shifting 1 of the positions there. And these adjustments reflect the remaining Salem High School budgetary changes. If you looked in the initial budget proposal, there was a placeholder for 4 positions. In the end, we decided on these recommendations so that Salem High could meet its the budget goal that we set for the school. I'm going to turn it over to you, Ms. Pauly.
Okay.
And the clicker down.
So we did make changes to our personnel numbers. So in the budget book that is posted online, it has a date on it so that anyone could easily see. It is the new version. It says April 28th. You'll see that our new cuts that we have included total $3.5 million. It was $3,585,276.35, and now is $3,505,040.09. That reflects some of the changes we made, adding positions back, cutting positions, and the differences in their salaries. So the new total for our personnel, which includes all of our staff as well as stipends, is $60,462,704.36. That is a slight increase over what you would have seen on April 7th when we presented the budget. Now, I would note one of the differences is in the personnel cuts is that one of the positions that we have recommended eliminating is actually not funded on the general fund. So it doesn't equal 1-to-1 in these cuts, but we were trying to make sure we could find ways to be equitable in next year's budget and still balance. So this slide you've seen before. Our appropriation is on the left-hand side circle. That's the $78,173,061. That is a 4.8% increase above our current year, which between last year and this year, our increase was 4.8%. And then for this current year and next year, the recommended increase is also 4.8%, which is historically much higher than what we have seen in our budget increases. But our actual expenditures before the cuts, before the offsets, was above $83 million. So I do think it's important to keep that in mind, that when we just rolled everything forward, we were well above our appropriation, even though our appropriation is significantly higher than it was last year. So as the superintendent mentioned, we are recommending that we restore 2 positions. That adds $115,936.41 to the general fund. We're eliminating from the general fund a .5 position, so that is the $35,000. But we are also, as you can see in the asterisk, eliminating a second position, that is $30,767.35. So the total additional expenses that we see being added to the general fund in this budget is about $80,000. So, as you'll recall from our last conversation, we had planned to get to balance by reducing the positions that are included in the budget book. Was 56.5. It is now 57. And then after that, prepaying special education tuition for students who go out of district, which is a practice that we have commonly done in the last few years, at least, and maximizing grant revenue, revolving revenue. So where we can put staff onto grant dollars or revolving fund that is steady revenue, we have recommended doing so. And the total that we had planned to reach was $825,000. Now we need to find an additional $80,000 in offsets after the additional eliminations that we've recommended this evening. The way we think we will cover that is potentially tapping into our reserves if we need to. So we do have reserves from our school choice revenue that has come in over the years. If we have to, we will turn to that to cover this overage. However, we're entering hiring season and we have some people retiring. They may be replaced with people who make lower salaries. So we're going to wait to see what our actual hiring looks like. The differential in salaries may help us to close that gap. So we may not need to tap into our reserves, and we are hoping to not, but that won't be clear until we have finished all of the hiring for the vacancies that come up in any year. So we are anticipating, after the cuts that we have recommended, an additional set of offsets that totals $905,366.10. So as we look ahead, as we sort of come to a place of finalizing this budget, there have been difficult choices made by every school and department, and we did try to respond with an equitable lens around how we could reduce our costs and still meet student needs. But we knew coming into this year that we faced a structural deficit because we had the same conversation last year and we had offset this budget with one-time money and reserves. We're currently doing that this year. We also made the intentional choice as part of advancing our values and advancing our strategic plan to increase salaries this year as a way of recruiting and retaining our high-quality educators. So we knew, based on the structural deficit we saw this year and the choices that we have intentionally made, that FY26 would be a complicated year and would require this level of cutting. We also, though, estimated that that would not be a one-year problem and that there would likely be a similar challenge in FY27. It's too soon to know for sure because, as I mentioned on the previous slide, some of this will be dictated by the staff we bring in and the choices that we make about how best to educate students in the coming year. However, I know this committee is planning to almost immediately, starting in May, take up conversations about how do we look systemically at what our expenses are and how can we build a budget for FY27 that allows us to educate our students and live within our budget. So it's too soon for me to give you a number about what size our deficit may or may not be in FY27, but I appreciate this committee's willingness to just take up this hard conversation as soon as next month. So I flag that just to say we've made some hard choices, and I think it will help us in FY27, but I don't think it will solve our FY27 challenge by adopting this budget. And Superintendent, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I think you did a really good job of laying the groundwork. I mean, I think we have to start immediately talking about, next year. We know we don't exactly know what that's going to be because there's been adjustments. There's been elimination of a lot of roles and personnel and non-personnel. But I do think there's advocacy work that needs to be done, and I'm sure others will have comments on this as well. But, we want to work closely with the unions because we are not getting our fair share. That's problematic. The pace of public education is not, it's outpacing what the need is, the legitimate need is in front of children. And so we've got work to do. And this is something we all can come together, parents, the unions, school committee, city officials. And I do think that's something we need to do. Otherwise, we're going to be facing this every single year. There are some significant structural issues. We have more to fix internally, but it's not just about that. I mean, the cost of educating children in the Commonwealth is obviously increasing every year, and we need to work collaboratively to address that. So I hope that we can do that with our partners. I think we all have the right interests, and as we said, these are all bad choices. Every choice that we've had to make is not a good choice. And while I do think the integrity of our work is preserved for next school year, there will come a point where I personally will have questions about whether our ability to do that without substantially impacting the student experience. I'm not saying the student experience won't be impacted next year, but not to the tune of what it could be over the next 2 to 3 years, unless there are changes in the way that schools are funded and how Salem is funded in Massachusetts.
So this evening, we will be asking you to approve our budget. This is the total budget, $78,173,061. I think the vote will actually be approving our personnel and non-personnel separately. And so I have those numbers for you as well. They're also in the new budget book. The non-personnel number is $18,615,959. And the personnel is $60,462,704.36. So that is what we will be asking you to approve this evening. Thank you.
Anything further on your report?
I know that's my report. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thanks. Are there any subcommittee reports?
I thought you were. No, I do have one other thing.
Go for it. All right.
Unless do you want the committee to comment on the budget now or later?
We'll get to it.
Okay, sorry. No, I would just add on the item related to the building committee. I did want to call out that I obviously mentioned the forums scheduled for the next 2 nights, and I hope to see people there. But over the last week and a half, really over break, we had the chance to visit multiple high schools, and I want to thank the members of the school committee and the members of the building committee that attended. We got a chance to visit Somerville High School on the Friday that we had off before break, and that was important because they do have CTE programs there, and we had a chance to see their high school. And then we, last Thursday, I spent the day visiting Belmont High School and Billerica High School, which are both designed by our architect and designer. So we had a chance to see the spaces. These are brand new buildings. It really is quite impressive, and is it's exciting that that's something we potentially could have here in Salem in the next couple of years. But I want to thank all the people who gave of their time to visit. It does help better inform what our school can look like and what will fit in our context and not. So I really encourage anybody, there'll be other visits scheduled along the way, that more and more people do try to get to see some of these schools. Really interested in visiting Waltham High School, which is a brand new high school that has CTE programs as well. Not designed by our designer, but a local high school that's about our size, if not a little bigger, but also has brand new CTE spaces as well. So for us to get a sense of what that could look like. So a lot of good movement here and excitement around the new building. We hope to see people there tomorrow night to give us their thoughts and to learn more about the design options that are moving forward.
Thanks. And I'll just, to add to that on the high school project, so the meetings, 'cause some people have reached out about it, this is not a final design process. This is selecting the preferred alternatives amongst the options, and then whatever is the selected preferred alternative, there'll be many more weeks of more granular and detailed design discussions that will be conducted in public in the building committee meetings, and have opportunities for more public engagement in whatever the configuration of the building is. You have no finance and operations report, I assume you've already made.
I have no.
Thank you. Any subcommittee reports? No subcommittees? Okay. We'll move on to Section 8, motions and resolutions. Our first item is the adoption of the FY 2026 proposed Salem Public School budget. And I'll open it up to comments and discussion from the members before entertaining any motions, if there are any. Member Manning.
Yeah, I had just I have one question, maybe to Elizabeth, I guess. Could you just go into a little more explanation of when you say salary differences, hiring to budget? What does hiring to budget in your mind mean? Because in mine, I have some thoughts of that, and I'm sure that maybe we're the same, but I don't know.
I hope so. So it is possible that the retirees will, or people who are leaving, will make more than the average salary for whatever that position is. And it is also possible that if we replaced that departing employee with someone who's brand new, that would be a significant savings to our personnel budget. I think it is unlikely. I do not think we should assume that we would replace every retiree with a first-year teacher and therefore realize a large savings. However, if we're having staff leave who make more than the average, if we assume that the person who replaces them will make around the average, then we can assume that there would be some savings achieved. So when I say hiring to budget, what we've budgeted for any known vacancy, we've budgeted the average salary. So if they are below that or at that, then I think we'll recoup some funds.
So if I were a hiring principal, though, what are the rules that you're imagining that I would have to go by? Because I'll tell you the backdrop on this. I mean, through a lot of years of hiring, principals in Salem, I think, were very proud of the fact, in a way, but grateful probably is a better word, that we were never given the guidance that we should hire to save money,
Right.
ever. That was never a contention, and I many times would be in a situation with leaders from other school districts, and that would come up, and people would be astounded that, that was not the guidance. So this term hiring to budget makes me nervous. I get the idea that if I retire and I've had for 40 years and, I have 4 masters and whatever,
Right.
but I want to know if the direction is, okay, it's good if we save some money on this new hire. But I don't think you get really a lot of bang for your buck in general, looking at in the bigger picture if you hire people with no experience.
Right.
Because then you're sort of paying out in a different way to get more training and to bring them along and blah, 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 blah. But I also don't want to have people in the position that, okay, you don't have to hire brand new people, but you have to hire, you can't go above this average amount.
Yeah.
That's what I don't want to do to people. And this term just really caught my eye tonight listening. I don't want to be putting our folks in a position where they are either given a total that they can't go over, or they're given a guideline for each position. I think we need to be looking for the best people that we can, that want to come here and work in our community. We have to be realistic that we can afford, but I don't think there's any need to put an exact plan or quota or, any reason that, Susie Superstar has come down from wherever to drop into Salem, and I cannot hire her because she's $2,000 over my limit.
And sorry.
So just tell me, calm me down.
Let me
You
calm
know?
you down.
know,
I struggled with how to word that slide.
Well, it
and
didn't
so
work.
It didn't work. So that's a good note. So it is not our plan, and I think the superintendent would double down on this, to say you cannot hire someone who makes above X. That is not our plan. Our plan continues to be that we'll hire the best fit person for each position. We will tell people, here's what this position is budgeted at. But if Susie Superstar comes and wants to come to Salem, then we'll figure out how to make that work. That's part of why I was a little opaque about whether we'll be dipping into our reserves or not. If it works out that we hire people who make less than the people they're replacing, we may not need to. But if we hire people who make exactly what the people who they were replacing, or maybe even more, then we'll need to dip into our reserves. I do hope that our new salary schedule and our new collective bargaining agreement with teachers allows us to plan for and budget for, and recruit the teachers that we want here, and similarly with our PSRP contract and our SAA contract. So we're hopeful that our new collective bargaining agreements will put us in a position to be competitive recruiting the best candidates, and that our average, which is higher, will be able to find good candidates. But our guiding mantra is going to continue to be to find the best candidate for the positions.
So you're saying there aren't going to be specific rules that a principal has to hire by, that you can't exceed X or, whatever?
No.
No, you're not saying that, or no, there won't be?
Oh, I am saying that no, there won't be.
Okay, just checking, Elizabeth. All right, okay, because, being serious, it is a troubling concept to me, that I was very grateful that
Yep.
didn't have to do
But
it.
Mary, can I just also jump in? I think, I also think that principals shouldn't have to be jumping through hoops as they've had to before. I think our new salary schedule does help a lot in this area, and I think we were, I don't necessarily think that we're gonna be faced with as much of this with the new schedule as we did in the past. I don't want principals to be hamstrung, but I want also principals to be thoughtful, right? when you have an average salary, right, that we've set, which is a good, healthy average salary now, than wasn't as healthy a year ago, that I would expect, though, that the majority of salaries are going to fall in below average because, not as many people move and shift around who are like, at the top of the scale. In the past, we were having to pay people, count more years of experience, and it didn't feel it didn't feel right because we weren't as competitive as we are now. I don't know why there would have to be many situations where people would have to go above the average, because you're not going to have many candidates who are going to we're going to be able to compete with other districts for people that have 3 to 5 years, 7 years. I mean, and that's the place we were losing people, is at like 7 years. We hope to take people, who have that level of experience and that we can bring in, and will still be, at or below the average salary. So while I want people to be thoughtful, I don't want people to be reckless about it, because we do have to be thoughtful about how we, if they're going to bring somebody in at the top of the scale, I think they'd have to explain exactly why that person is the right candidate.
It's
and I
only
think
fair.
that's only fair. If that's the case, that we have that conversation. But in the end of the day, I've been in that position as a principal, as have you. You want what the best, if that's the only certified and the best candidate, then we're not going to get in the way of the person hiring them.
I think the term hiring to budget
Yeah,
is problematic.
I hear that.
It doesn't
We
say
didn't
what
like
you're
that.
saying now.
So note to ourselves that we're not going to ever use that term again. How about that?
That works.
Okay, because I do appreciate it sounds worse than what we were planning on doing.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that up till,
No.
but I just saw that, okay. I had one other question. I guess not a question so much as just more of a comment. I think when you were talking about the hard choices that that we had to make, and we did have to make some hard choices, everybody here. But I think, let me think it out. I think that we were able to make those hard choices this year without compromise on where we are as a system as far as our values. I don't think that we made hard choices that went against those. Maybe tightened the belts a little on some areas, had some big decisions to make in other areas, but I believe, I really feel that anytime I was involved in any discussions and anything I heard from anybody up here, always the behind the back in the back of our minds was, what does this do for kids? The whole thing about kids have to be first, we're still trying to put here. Is it good for kids to come before? Is it good for teachers? Is it good for parents? Is it good for the community? And I think we were able to do that this year in this budget, even with the cuts that are involved in it. I guess I just want to make the comment that I don't know if we would be able to do that another year the same way that we are right now this year. And I just want to be very honest about folks. I'm going to vote for this budget, but I just want folks to be thinking that when we say we have some hard choices ahead, we do, as far as where the system is gonna head and what direction we're taking. Not as far as anything that we say we stand for, but how we're gonna organize to do that. And I think that as soon as this budget calms down and is passed and we're into putting it in place, then we do need to start very quickly looking at the bigger picture for the next several years. I would sort of remind folks that some of the discussion for when we brought the middle school over from Saltonstall, some of the discussions on those meetings where we talked about the delivery of service and the resources available to provide the best possible service in one place, just for economy of even having the certain number of positions, et cetera. I think we need to be looking ahead and thinking we need to look. We looked at it at that level of schools. We need to look at it as a system in the time ahead. And I just want to put that out there that we are voting for a budget that I'm wondering, I'm anticipating may need to have a different look on it in the future. That I think we're ready as a system to tackle that, and it's time we really look at it. So, to me, this budget does what we want for this year, and we need to hang on to the values that we're saying that we stand for under this budget, but then maintain those same values as we look ahead to the future, which I think is going to be even more complicated, certainly, than this year was. But I guess that I just want to lay that out there. Thank you.
Member Cruz?
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate the opportunity to see these budget updates, and I want to thank the superintendent, the assistant superintendent Polly, and the whole team for really listening to the feedback that was brought forward at the last budget hearing. I'll say for my part, I am planning on voting in favor of this budget, and much like Member Manning, I do put that stake in the ground that this is the first of a series of really difficult budgets, which are going to require us to have even more difficult conversations about how we're offering education to our children here within the district. I just want to double down on the emphasis on the advocacy. We know that we're being shortchanged by the Chapter 70 formula, that we've been negatively impacted by inflationary issues, in addition to the rising costs of different services within the district. And so I really just want to call on members of our community. We are going to start this conversation following the budget hopefully being passed this evening. And I'd just like to ask that we continue to have really deep engagement with various stakeholders, so our unions, our students, our parents, as we have an even more difficult fiscal situation next year. We're really going to need everyone to raise up their voices, up to my colleagues here on the Hill, about how communities like Salem and many others are in a position where the Chapter 70 formula brought a lot of promise, but quite frankly hasn't kept up with student need. And in the face of a federal government that's withdrawing its support from public education, it's really going to be necessary for the Commonwealth to stand by its values of providing a quality education to all students. So I recognize that this is probably the most difficult budget I've had to vote for. Next year's will be even more difficult. And I just continue to ask that our partners in the union, I know that we're lucky in Salem to have the vice president of AFT Mass work with us to ensure that we make it the strongest possible case for why next year is the time to revisit the entire funding formula, so that communities like ours that face these tremendous structural deficits that are only going to have negative impact on our children can be addressed in short order. So I thank you all for your engagement, all the members of the public that have been in attendance writing into us. I think we've heard you in some areas that we were able to make adjustments, but that road only gets more difficult as we go on. And then I just think that the last piece that I would just name is that, I do think from an engagement standpoint, I was really pleased that at the last budget hearing, we did have some folks that were non-English speaking parents who had made their way to the budget hearing. I would love to make sure that next year we think about how we can be more intentional about reaching out to families where English is not their first language, to talk about how these decisions are going to impact them. I think we put out some hypothetical situations around everything from school choice to transportation, et cetera. And I do have the concern that the information lag about the impacts of this budget and the future ones for members of our community that, again, English is not their first language. That lag is incredibly difficult for families to navigate. They're going to get caught by surprise by some of the services that may shift. So to the extent possible that we can really think about how we reach more deeply into and engage our families, that would be, I think, on my part, greatly appreciated. So I look forward to taking this vote and appreciate all the work that's gone into making some of these adjustments this evening.
Thank you. Any other comments from members? Yep, Member Campbell.
Thanks. I just wanted to thank the superintendent and his team for such a thoughtful conversation. I feel like we've spent a lot of time having conversations around this budget for many months now, and I feel like there's been a lot of transparency regarding, the challenging situation that we're in, and having really transparent conversations with all those who could be impacted by it, and for your thoughtful revisions to the budget based on the feedback from committee members and from the community. So it's all just very much appreciated. I know it's not easy. And then also thank you to all of the community members who've come out and been good advocates for their schools and the services and the kids in their community as well. So thanks. That's it.
So I just want to echo that thanks to everybody that came out to provide comment at the public hearing and share their feedback in writing as well. It's certainly a challenging budget year. Setting aside the uncertainty of federal funding and the hostility of this administration in Washington towards public education, the pressure of rising cost centers on our schools up against the limited revenue options that cities and towns have has been a tremendous challenge for us. And while the cost for personnel has certainly been going up, I want to echo what Member Cruz said, and that the contract that we reach with our educators at the start of the school year is appropriate. Educators need fair compensation, not only so they can afford to live in our community, but to stem the churn of turnover that disrupts kids' education. But we also have to be mindful when we're talking about affordability to think about how people can afford to live in Salem by mitigating the increases in property taxes as well. The contract that we reached strikes a fair and thoughtful balance, and now the budget that we need to put forward in order to pay for it does as well. But wages alone are not what's putting pressure on this budget. I want to be very clear. Next year, the average teacher salary is going to go up about 9% in Salem, but electricity costs, as we heard for the district, are going to go up 30%. Natural gas by 10%. Health insurance costs will go up by 11%, which is almost $1.2 million more than last year. Out-of-district tuition will go up 47%, an increase of $1.4 million, despite a projection of only one more out-of-district placement. Homeless student transportation will go up 46%, despite a 9% increase in homeless students. Any increase in that number is too many kids, of course. We need homes for these kids, or at a minimum, we need to find space for them here in Salem until they can find permanent housing. It's the moral thing to do, but it's also the fiscally responsible thing to do. So there are a lot of cost centers that are out of the control of this committee and out of the control of the city that are bearing on the FY26 budget. And on the other side of the ledger, what do we have? We do not have revenue streams that are going up by 46 or 47% or 30% or 11% or even 10%. Proposition 2.5 caps the property tax levy increase at 2.5%. And we certainly don't want to push this burden overly onto property taxpayers. Chapter 70, as Member Cruz mentioned, our state aid for schools is also limited. The state law caps consideration of inflation in Chapter 70 at 4.5%. Doesn't matter if CPI is 7% or if costs are going up by double-digit percentage increases. Once it's over 4.5%, the state says it's on the district to deal with. Chapter 70 is broken in many ways. As this committee discussed at our finance retreat earlier this year, and as I shared in testimony to the legislature as far back as September of 2023, shortly after first coming into this office, we know what's flawed and we need the state to act. Even though the share of Salem students is becoming increasingly low income, the Chapter 70 formula is driving our local contribution up and the state's down. Over the last 3 years, Salem's target aid share from the state dropped by 10%, more than any other gateway city. In 2022, we were classified as a minimum aid community, despite growing high-need student population and our own per-pupil local spending, which exceeded all other gateway cities. The reason for this is not a mystery. DESE and DOR predicted this problem in a local contribution study that they published as far back as 2020, pointing rightly to the cap on required local contributions as one of the leading culprits. That cap says that no community, no matter how affluent, is required to pay more than 82.5% of their school foundation budget. As more communities hit that cap and as foundation budgets increase overall, it results in a significant and unevenly distributed increase in local contribution requirements for communities not subject to the cap, communities like Salem. And what's worse, to make up for what the formula sees as a deficiency in our city's ability towards meeting that local contribution target, the law adds an added increment, effectively a penalty. And last year, that increment was almost $1 million. Distribution of the ever-growing required local contribution burden across uncapped communities like Salem lessens aid that would otherwise be available to the very populations the Student Opportunity Act is intended to serve. Despite all the good the SOA did, the legislation did not include any changes to how the required local contribution or a municipality's ability to pay is calculated. I will continue to push for a state review of that formula to address this inequity, and for the state to give cities and towns more revenue options to meet our growing costs without needing to overburden our property taxpayers. And I hope the district, our partners in the teachers union, and our legislators will work together to stand up for this. I'll just close with this last thought. The adjustments that the district has put forward are not ideal, but they're what's necessary. And I appreciate that we've been able to take these last few weeks to modify them based on the public feedback that we've received. The work of this committee for this year and for the years ahead is going to be to try to find ways to strengthen the foundation for our district, to meet the goals of our strategic plan, and to provide our kids with the best education possible. Yes, we need more partnership from the state to address the formula issues I mentioned. And yes, we should anticipate and are already seeing a breathtaking abandonment at the federal level of our public schools and our kids. So it falls to us here on the ground to do as much as we can with what we have to support every child whose future is entrusted to us. The proposed budget, I believe, meets that trust to the very best of its ability, and I will also be voting for it. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve or adopt the FY26 proposed budget.
We're gonna,
Seconded.
all right. So we're gonna vote on the non-personnel and the personnel number. So, is there a motion to approve the proposed FY26 personnel budget in the amount of $60,462,704.36?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion made by Member Miranda, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Cruz? Under discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. Member Cruz?
Yes.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
And myself, yes. The matter carries. Is there a motion to approve the FY 2026 non-personnel budget in the amount of $18,615,959?
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Manning, seconded by Member Miranda. Roll call vote. Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
Yes.
And myself, yes. The matter carries. Dr. Zarek?
Can I just, thank you. I just want to note that this now moves to the city council, and I should have said this earlier, and that we're scheduled for May 27th in the evening, and the city council will hear the, similar presentation from us. It does need to be approved by the city council following your approval tonight. So I just want to let folks know, and we'll publicize that as well. So May 27th, I believe 6 o'clock.
That's right.
Okay. I love being first, Mayor. All right.
Yep.
Could
Member
one
Manning?
of you just explain the process, the rights, like sort of that, what the council can do and can't do with the budget? Just so folks know that might be going to the meeting or just.
Thank you for it.
Well, the council can, can vote to provide more funding or less funding, but they don't have line item authority. Only the school committee has the authority of deciding which lines get how much funding, but they can send it back to the school committee if they choose to increase or decrease our budget. Hopefully that typically doesn't happen. It could happen, but they can't tell the school committee how to use the funds. They can just send it back with less money or more money. Did I answer that?
Yeah, I just wanted folks to know that.
Sure.
All right. The next matter under motions and resolutions is Policy 5103, Controlled Choice Student Assignment, second reading.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Miranda. Under discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Member Manning.
Yep.
Member Miranda.
Yes.
Member Campbell.
Yes.
Member Cornell.
Yes.
Member Cruz.
Yes.
Member Hoffman.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Matter carries. Policy 5501, responsible use policy in media, second reading.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Motion made by Member Miranda, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Miranda.
Yes.
Member Campbell.
Yes.
Member Cornell.
Yes.
Member Cruz.
Yes.
Member Hoffman.
Yes.
Member Manning.
Yes.
And myself, yes. The matter carries. Announcements. Any announcements from members? Yeah, Member Hoffman.
Saturday night at the Community Life Center, there's going to be a Nagley prom, and all students are welcome, ages 14 to 23. You can register at Nagley's Facebook page. There's a QR code as well I can give you. It goes, did I say it goes 5 to 8? So, and there's some dresses at Nagley too, free. If anyone needs one or would like to join in.
AJ, do you mind forwarding that to Chris
Yeah.
O'Donnell so we can make sure that that gets out to our community? Because I don't know if I've seen that yet on our social media, but I want to make sure kids and families know about that.
I just want to share that we've been working with the city clerk's office on voting in the schools and have been able to identify locations at Bates and Salem High School that are have separate entrances to the outside, so voters don't have to enter the building and go through where there are students. So starting with this fall's elections, at those two schools, the voting will be moved to a different location in the building with the access directly to the outside from the public. So whether or not school is in session with students, it will be a more secure environment. Any other announcements? Any final motion? Oh,
Just one
Dr.
other, yeah, sorry. There is, I know the Salem Children's Alliance is hosting a free drop-in on Wednesday night from 5 to 6:30 about local camps and summer programs in the community at the Community Life Center. And family and caregivers can stop by to register their children for any of those programs on Wednesday evening, April 30th from 5 to 6:30. So I think that's an important thing for our families to know. And Chris, I think you've advertised that already. Put it out there. All right? Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Member Cruz, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Campbell.
Yes.
Member Cornell.
Yes.
Member Cruz.
Yes.
Member Hoffman.
Yes.
Member Manning.
Yes.
Member Miranda.
Yes.
Myself, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.